It's an honor to be here. This is my first trip to India, but it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm honored to be here. So thank you to our hosts for having us. It's been a great time. Let's see, do I have the clicker? Thank you. Got it. And I see the clock is already working. Just a couple things to begin with, I guess. I want to give you a little background about what PCDI is. It's Princeton Child Development Institute. It was really the first school for autism developed in the state of New Jersey. We've been around for nearly 50 years. We'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary in 2020. And right now we have, we're small. We have 31 students in the education program, 26 adults in our adult program. We have several group homes for our adults and something called supervised apartments. And the goal here of my presentation today is to try to show you sort of the comprehensive approach that we take to the assessment and treatment of children and adults with autism. And I know I have way too many slides, so I'm going to jump around a bit. I didn't want to just pick a few of them and present them today. I wanted you to get a sense of what I present to our board of directors, because the data that I'm presenting today is really part of my annual evaluation. And so it's a very comprehensive approach. And the other thing I guess I would say is that one of the things we try to do is make the most of every minute. One of the things you learn if you're working with certainly children with autism, every minute counts. And before I get any further, I also want to thank, I truly stand on the shoulders of giants. I've been at PCDI 5 years, but the program was really founded by Pat Krantz and Lynn McClanahan, and I would like to thank them and my colleagues back working hard this week, and staff and students and parents as well. A couple other quick things. What I won't cover today. We have, I'm picking up on some of the comments that Neil and Alan made earlier, we have over 1,000 individualized database programs that we can pull from and use for any new student or apply to a student that we already have, and then we can further individualize those programs. They keep getting developed. Those programs deal with anything from how you teach a child to use a scissors, how to cut paper, how to shower appropriately, how to tie shoes, how to trace letters, and so on. But I'm not going to cover much of that. The other thing I would mention, over, again, almost nearly 50 years, if a child is enrolled in our school before the age of 5, over 40% of those children end up in a regular education setting without any support. And again, one of the things that seems to be really critical is if you can begin applied behavior analysis, the earlier you get to begin it, the better the outcome. What else here? And the last thing I should also mention, PCDI has developed a variety of dissemination sites. We have 3 back in the United States, we have 1 in Poland, and we have 1 in Turkey. And I thought it was kind of interesting. I posted something on Facebook, and the directors of the program in Turkey are friends of mine on there. I just said what a great time I was having here in India, and they both liked it and everything. But part of our training model for a dissemination site, they're new directors, relatively new directors, and we're going to talk with them. They've already asked if they could each spend 4 months at PCDI basically learning how to be an executive director, how to run an entire school, and we're going to try to work that out with them. But again, that's not the primary purpose of my talk today, but it is something that, that PCDI is known for, and that is taking the model that I'm going to present to you and disseminating it both within the United States and then internationally. Okay, when we present to our board, We typically present data from our adult life skills and residential programs, and then from the education program. And again, given the time, I'm not going to get to every slide here, but I'll try to hit some of the highlights. Our adult program has been in place for 32 years. In fact, our oldest adult is 54, I believe, and he's been with us since he was 6. So he was our founding student, and he's doing great. So the adult program been around 32 years. The adult program, the learner to instructor ratio is 2 to 1. As you've heard from other speakers in our education program, the ratio is more like closer to a 1 to 1, especially at the earlier ages. But within sometimes a matter of months, even if we've got a 4 or 5-year-old who comes into our program, we might even begin at lunch where we have 1 staff member and 2 students. We are trying to program for independence from practically the moment the child walks into our building to the time they exit. Number of adults served last year is 28, and we provided 32.5 hours of intervention per week. We divided, and again this sometimes changes, but last year we had 3 modules. Whippers are something, they're weekly individualized progress reports where staff, basically it's a kind of a self-management system. They have to develop objectives. So if they want to get done that week, it gets checked over by the trainer and so on. We have trainers, so they are a level above direct care staff, so our trainer to staff ratio is 1 to 4. And again, we have group homes, supervised apartments. Group homes we have, and again, something I'm not going to really talk much about here, but we follow what's called the family teaching model, and that is in our group homes, typically it's a married couple literally live in the group home, and they have their own residence there, but they share meals with our adults. They go shopping, they go to baseball games, you name it. And we have other staff that support them as well, but it's kind of an interesting model. Our supervised apartments, we do not have overnight staff there. We have 4 individuals in supervised apartments. Staff are available. They're at a large kind of apartment complex. Staff are available if needed. But for the most part, these adults are pretty well independent. They cook, they hold jobs, they pay their bills, you know, that type of thing. We certainly help whatever is needed, but we try to be as minimal as possible. And there the trainer staff ratio is a little bit lower, it's 1 to 6. Overall, in the adult life skills program, residential programs, we have 23 staff, 4 trainers. We had all 27 were evaluated. The evaluation is another interesting process at PCDI. I'd heard about it and had never experienced it before I started there 5 years ago. The way the evaluation works, it's an all-day evaluation. And I've had it done to me when I started as a director of the adult program. And basically what happens is somebody comes in from outside the program, in my case, and watches me work with adults, do trainings, you know, whatever else it might have been, and then writes up an evaluation as to how I did. So it's a little nerve-wracking having somebody stare at you for 4 or 5 hours. I just completed one for one of our staff in the education program, and with her, I meet her at 8:30, and other than her lunch break, I'm with her until 2:30. And I'm taking notes on what she's doing with the children. I might be asking her questions about why she did what she did. I'm taking notes, I'm collecting data, and at the end of the evaluation, this is always their most feared part, it's called the technology portion of the evaluation, where we ask them questions about behavior analysis. They get to generate 2 questions. we get to generate a third question. And people are often live in great fear of that last question, but we tailor it to the person and to the person's level of experience. As you can see, that last point there, 25 of our 27 staff met criterion. What that meant was that 2 staff were not invited back. And that's always a difficult time when you have to tell staff that they did not meet criterion performance. But again, that's a pretty good percentage. At 93% did. We do everything we can to try to keep that number up. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. We also track staff training data, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but the trainers' initials are listed there. Those are the 4 trainers. It has the module where they work, the range of training that they provided per month, and then over the course of the year, and then the mean number per month. And so you can see quite a bit of training occurs. This is one I really wanted to highlight. I won't spend much more time in the adult program. 23 of our 28 adults are employed part-time or full-time. And the national average for adults with developmental disabilities, the employment rate in the United States is far lower than that. So we're very happy with the level of employment that we have. And then we broke it down a little bit further. 5 of our 20 who are employed have some kind of a professional position. The other 18 work in some kind of a service position. So we actually have 3 adults, for example, they work in a debt collection agency. And some of the things they have to do, they sort the mail, they will scan documents, things like that. And it was interesting because first week or 2 on the job, what we were told was, you know, if a check comes in, because it's a debt collection agency, those go in this pile. If it's a credit card payment, those go in this pile. And if it's something other than that, it goes in this third pile. And about a week or 2 in, one of our adults opened up the envelope, looked at it, read the letter, and apparently just had really big eyes and didn't say a word. And our staff member was there and said, put it in the correct pile. And he just kind of shook his head and he handed it to her. And the letter said something like, and again, remember it's a debt collection agency, said something like, I hate you all, I'm not paying you a penny, I'm going to find you, I'm going to, you know, whatever. And so clearly he read enough of that to know that that was a threatening letter. So our staff member there, because we provide staffing at these work sites if those adults need it. And the person who worked at the organization came over and said, oh, that goes immediately to our security department. That's a different pile. So we had to teach to that as well. So again, over half are working 25 hours or more. We have 7 different work sites, so we're very happy with that. One of the other things we do, another part of our model, we do what's called program-wide engagement. The executive director or somebody else, some senior manager, simply picks a certain time of day, maybe once a month roughly or so, walks around and checks to see what are people doing. Are they engaged or not? And that includes staff and learners. And as you can see, it's a random check, all right? And as you can see, the numbers are really quite high. Last piece here, and again, I've got about 16 minutes left, so I want to get to our education program. We have an external reviewer come in every year. So this is a person who does not work at PCDI, so they're independent of us. They probably do have some familiarity with our system, and they spend anywhere from maybe 2 to 4 or 5 days looking through our data notebooks. And one of the things I haven't mentioned before, our data notebooks are, you know, they can be about that high. I just went through one, I brought one home over our holiday break, and that child had 62 individualized programs. And so obviously an outside reviewer can't review every program for every adult. So what you see is that in 2018, for example, the reviewer reviewed 80 out of 203 programs, reviewed at least one program per adult, another thing we try for. And then those other numbers, individualized means, was it individualized for that person? You know, was there a clear specification of what rewards were being used, what prompting sequences were going to be used, that type of thing. 98% of the programs produced change in behavior in the desired direction, so nearly 100%. 98% were viewed as they may continue because the outside reviewer felt all pieces were in place. 98% had parental or guardian consent. We'd like that to be 100, but sometimes we get consent every year. Sometimes that may slip a little bit. IOA, we have to collect IOA at least 4 times per year for each program, and so we check for that. And then we look to see, are we collecting generalization data? And we don't have a set criterion for what we're looking for there, but we've been trying to increase that number. And as you can see, over those 3 years, it went from 73 to 73 to 78%. So, you know, that's family focus. That's one of the group homes. Another piece of this, and I'll actually get to this, we do something called consumer evaluations. And I can just briefly describe this. This runs on a scale of 1 to 7, with 7 being the best, 6 being criterion. You're doing okay, you're doing your job. 7 being outstanding. Even a score of 5 means you're somewhere somewhat below criterion. So we have parents evaluate our program, and you can see we've got numbers here over the course of 3 years. Our trustees, our board of trustees also evaluates our programs, again through this method. So it might be, does the adult program provide effective intervention services? What do our trustees think? And again, you've got a nice upward trend over the last 3 years. Went from 6.4 to 6.6 to now 6.8. We also do consumer evaluations. Our staff members get to evaluate the program. They get to evaluate each other. This is done on an annual basis. And again, you typically see the numbers here are pretty good. And employers get to evaluate how we're doing as well. And again, those numbers have generally been around 7. The last year, 6.6. My guess is that the slight decrease occurred probably because we picked up some new employers, and we're all kind of trying to get used to each other. So here, again, the education program, give you a sense of what we do there. As I said before, we're in our 49th year now. 1-to-1 ratio. We had 30 students last year. We provide 6 hours of instruction per day. We have 4 modules. All of them, again, use that Whipper. Trainer to staff ratio is 1-to-4. We then also include how many hours of training do we provide. We provided 15 hours of training via pre-service, and then 3 of us are BCBAs or BCBADs, and we also have the supervisory training certificate, so we provide training to our staff so that they can sit for the BCBA exam. And we had a great year, I should mention, since Neil's on the BACB. I believe all of our staff who sat for the exam passed it on the first time this year, so we're very happy. And they worked hard. They worked really hard. Our intervention staff, so we have 25 staff. We have 6 trainers. Again, that brings us to 31, so we're roughly a 1-to-1 ratio here. We have to get our staff evaluations done in 30 days. We did have 2 that were late, but it's not too bad. All of our students had some kind of a motivational system, again, completely individualized. We also collected program-wide engagement. Those numbers were quite high. And then a couple other things I wanted to mention about really kind of specific to the education program. So we provided 1,198 training sessions to 30 students, which is a mean of 40 visits per family. So one of the things that our staff do in the education program, they're told to get in, their hours are 8 to 4, basically. But for our newer students, and especially our younger students, the parents are expected to come in at least once per week for training. We often will do that within 2 to 3 weeks of a child being there. And it might begin with the parent just sitting in the room. And that allows the child, and it's interesting, the child will sometimes start behaving inappropriately when the parent comes in. And one of the things we have to tell a parent is, watch how we handle that now. And but then fairly quickly we get the parent in and they learn to do what we're doing. And so what the student learns is that, what happens at school is also going to happen at home now. And I think that's a critical feature of our program. The other piece is that our staff go out to the home. So we do home programming, and again, for most of our students, it's once per week. For our younger students, it might even be twice per week. So when I say that our staff are very dedicated, I mean it, because they might leave at 2:30 or 3 o'clock, and our students get bussed in or parents drop them off. Not all of them are all that local. We have some kids who come from 90 minutes away, one-way trip. And so our staff then might have to drive out 90 minutes. They'll spend 2 or 3 hours in the home, drive back 90 minutes if they live near Princeton, and then come back to work first thing in the morning. So they work very hard. One of the other things we do with our home programming piece, we don't just do it in the evening. Some of our parents might say, I have the hardest time getting my child up and ready and get them on the bus or get her on the bus. And if that continues to be a problem, our staff will go out to the home at about 6 a.m. and they will help the parent get the child dressed, showered, books ready, that type of thing, and get them on the bus. We've had cases where children have sleep problems, and sometimes one sleep problem is waking up in the middle of the night and going in and trying to get, sleep with mom or dad. And parents have said, we can't break this. We're at our wits' end. We don't know what to do. And we'll say, do you want our staff to be there overnight? And if your son or daughter walks down the hallway, we'll redirect them back to their room. We have a procedure in place. And parents typically will say, absolutely. If I can get a good night's sleep, I'll take it. And so our staff, and we will make accommodations. They don't have to work 24 straight hours, but they might spend 5, 6 hours at the parent's home, go home and sleep for a few hours, and then they come back in. So the home programming piece is a critical feature. We also have something called a Human Rights Committee. This committee is made up of 6 committee members. None of them are employed by PCDI. They meet quarterly, and they review all of our treatment programs. So if we have, because some of our children engage in self-injury, some engage in aggression, property destruction, those types of things. And Human Rights Committee reviews all those programs. They review some of our skill acquisition programs to make sure that they're making progress. And they'll also review any types of research studies that we're doing. And again, here's, what was this? Okay, this was our data notebook review. And again, you can see here, 145 programs were reviewed of instructional programs, 23 of treatment, 77 home programs. So each child has a set of programs that are implemented at home. They might be very similar to what's done at school, or they might be very different. Some parents, as our children get older, they will say something, and again, I've got a 19-year-old at home, and obviously you want a 19-year-old to be more independent than a 4-year-old. And so our parents might say, I want them to start doing some of the chores around the house. So a program we might implement at home might be a vacuuming program, or making the bed program. And that's also important because it's something that I also didn't really mention, but we blend the training we do. We teach a variety of academic programs. So if you came into our school, you might walk into one module and they're having a geography lesson. And the next module, they might be learning how to zip a jacket. A child might be learning how to zip up a jacket. But somebody else might be already learning to clean windows, or might be learning how to scan documents. And again, part of that is we're trying to get these children to be as independent as possible and to find them a job when they turn 18 or 21, when they age out of our education program. Again, consumers were done here. Board of Trustees rated us fairly highly. Again, anywhere from a 6.4 to a 7 out of 7. Staying within the guidelines and leadership, so are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? Are we staying within our lane, as you will? And again, fairly good scores there. In the as part of the annual report, we also get ranking here as well in terms of staff familiarity, cooperation, effectiveness, how much communication is occurring. Now again, if you look at 2016, we had a low score, relatively low score there, and as you can see by 2017, we were able to bring that score back up. So again, these are kind of viewed as key performance indicators, I guess, if you will, for us. And it lets us know, is there a problem here somewhere? And if so, then we should be able to address it. Again, staff members get to evaluate the program. The way it works there, staff members in the education program evaluate every other staff member in education. They evaluate me, they evaluate the principal, and then the entire program administration as well. This past year, and some of the comments are actually very useful, some not as much. We asked them to write comments. And one of them this past year was, we didn't close the school enough when it snowed. The other complaint was we closed the school too often when it snowed. And I said to my senior managers, we must have done a pretty good job, because some of the people didn't like what we did, or we thought we were too liberal, others thought we were too conservative. So we probably did okay. So anyway, that pretty much wraps up the presentation. But again, the purpose of me sharing these types of data with you is to try to show you that what we do, it's kind of this 360 evaluation. It's more than just observing how one individual staff member works with one child. What we have found is that these evaluations that occur, getting feedback from different sets of people and so on, can be very helpful for us. And again, it's a model that's worked really well for almost 50 years, and it's been an honor to share that model with you. So I'm actually ending about 30 seconds early. So thank you, everybody.